Well, it's Monday after Easter. Welcome to Enough for Today. Thanks for joining me, and I hope that you are off to a great start to your week. It is April the 5th, and I barely have a voice today, and that's because we just had a busy week and a full weekend, and I think it's partially the season, the pollen and the blossoms of life that are getting into my lungs. I'm a little congested today. But anyway, I hope you had a great Resurrection Sunday. As I scroll Facebook, I see churches smaller than Emmanuel and larger than Emmanuel and just all across the spectrum. I see small auditoriums and large auditoriums and I see churches that had, a small gathering in some foreign country, or I see mega churches across the country that had big events and big music things and just everywhere in between. I'm just thankful to see God's church on the move, frankly, and seats full and auditoriums again filled with people. In contrast to last year, I remember speaking mostly to a camera and to an empty room. It was a very different time. So my heart is full at what God did at Emmanuel yesterday and what he did in the lives and hearts and churches of so many good friends and co-laborers. New Hope Baptist Church, Andrew Browning, they had a great day, a wonderful time in their new building. And anyway, I have just been mindful today that, and maybe you're a pastor or spiritual leader that jumped into Enough for Today. Let me just pause and say, don't compare what God did at your church or what your church is able to do or what you are able to do to anybody else, because there's always somebody out there that's bigger and better. There's always something going on to compare to make you feel somehow less or somehow insufficient. And really what God did in your church and in your life and through your obedience was pretty special. So rest in it. Just rest in it. Be okay with it. When I came to Emmanuel 8.5, almost 9 years ago now, 93 people voted us in, and it was a big empty auditorium. But, that first Easter, we just had a great time. I don't remember what the attendance was, but that wasn't even the issue. We just rejoiced in a resurrected Savior, and we rejoiced in souls saved. I know for sure we had 4 or 5 adults saved on Friday night. I do not know about yesterday yet, but I know that we preached the gospel as clearly and as simply and as plainly as we possibly could. And God always does good work with that. He always draws hearts, whether that was online or in the service, I don't know. But my friend, for pastors and spiritual leaders, the Monday after Easter is kind of a crash. It's more chemical and adrenal than anything else. Let that happen. Don't get discouraged. Don't be depressed. Just rejoice in what God did. Well, maybe you're not a pastor or leader, but maybe you feel the same way. I don't know. Welcome to Monday. We left off a week ago from Psalm 44, and we moved into Passion Week and studying the life of Jesus, tracing him from Monday through the resurrection. I believe, after much study, that Jesus was crucified on Friday morning at 9 o'clock and that he resurrected on the first day of the week. One of the primary reasons I believe that is because any other calculation of the days ends up being the fourth day that Jesus resurrected, and I have a problem with that. So we celebrated Good Friday. We had a wonderful Friday evening service, and then Saturday we had about somewhere over 1,000 people from our community come out to the extravaganza. I'm so thankful for our church family for the hard work and service and sacrifice they expended on Saturday to bless so many families and so many kids. And then many of those folks came, I think many of those folks came on Sunday to church, and many in our church family returned on yesterday, 3 services. It was just a wonderful time. My heart is full. My voice is tired, my body is tired, but my heart is full. But before Easter weekend, and Easter week, I should say, we were in Psalm 44. And we left off somewhere around verse 15 and 16. And that's where I want to dial in today. The psalm is a psalm of the experience or the sense of defeat, even though God has not changed, and even though ultimate victory is promised. What do we do when we feel defeated? And the psalmist in verses 1 through 8 says, well, I hear the stories of other people and in our history. Our fathers told us, God, that you're great and you've done great things. But right now, verse 9, we feel cast off and put to shame. We've been defeated. Israel had experienced some sense of defeat in battle in this moment. They had lost, temporarily lost. And they're expressing this in song. Their enemies seem to be gaining ground. Their enemies seem to be winning. Haven't we experienced that a lot as God's people in the last year, as churches, as Christians? We feel like the enemy is gaining ground. We will feel that way at times, but that doesn't mean God has lost any ground. Because the enemy seems to be on the rise or seems to be winning, that means nothing to the ultimate victory that God has promised and that he always brings. I want you to catch something, though. As a result of the defeat they've experienced, their enemies are mocking them and scorning them. And this was a uniquely Israel experience that they're writing about, but it draws forward into the 21st century that as believers were mocked and scorned constantly. All over the world, believers are being persecuted and martyred. But even in America, where we supposedly have freedom and tolerance, Christians are more and more ridiculed and mocked and demonized and vilified and made to look foolish. And the more, by the way, the more we hitch the wagon of the gospel to politics, the more we will look foolish and the more substantive the vilification will seem, okay? Because Christianity is not political. It's not geopolitical. It is not of this earth. The kingdom of Jesus is not of this earth. And so the more we attach our hopes and aspirations and dreams as Christians to political complex, it's a mistake. It's a big mistake. But I digress. Verse 15. Look at the experience of the psalmist. My confusion is continually before me, and the shame of my face hath covered me, for the voice of him that reproacheth and blasphemeth by reason of the enemy and avenger. What we're reading about in verse 15 and 16 is the confusion that is produced in a God follower because of the voices and the noises of the enemies of God. Look at it again. My confusion is continually before me. God, I'm dizzy with perplexity. I am dismayed. I'm confused. Now remember, God is not the author of confusion. Satan is. Satan wants to confuse you and confound you. God confounds his enemies, but Satan tries to confound and confuse the people of God. And he uses the noise and the scorn and the defiance and the mockery of God's enemies to do that. My confusion is continually before me, and the shame of my face has covered me. My countenance has fallen. These people in this moment, to be honest with you, they're ashamed of God. They're ashamed that they've been put to shame. God is an embarrassment to them right now. Sounds like 21st century Christianity in many respects. For the voice, why? Why is there confusion and shame? Because of the voice of him that reproacheth and blasphemeth by reason of the enemy and the avenger. The enemies of Israel are constantly reproaching and mocking and scorning and blaspheming. And we do experience this as followers of God. You may experience it today. You may experience it this week because you are a God follower. You may come off this incredible Resurrection Week high where you are just so exultant in the resurrection of Jesus. And then you go to work on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and you get slam dunked by a scornful, atheistic, secularistic, naturalistic, philosophy. People laugh you to scorn because you're so foolish to believe that a man who claimed to be God actually rose from the dead. Well, friend, you're in good company. And sometimes those voices can create confusion. They can confound us, make us perplexed, make us ashamed, and maybe possibly even regret that we're God followers, that we've gone all into Christianity. And I just want to simply say to you, my friend, today, don't let God's enemies confuse and confound and crush the joy and the hope you have in Jesus. And I want to leave it there for today. We're going to turn a corner in the next verse. We have come through the hard part of this psalm. But it's important that we reckon with the reality that sometimes following God is a struggle with confusion against his enemies. Don't let the world rob your joy today. Jesus is still alive and he still wins.